India is about to attempt something only one country on Earth has ever pulled off, and it wants to do it nearly twice as big. The plan is to wall off a sea, but this sea does not sit still. It fights back twice a day, harder than anything the Dutch ever faced. First, look at how the Dutch did it. In 1932, the Netherlands did the impossible. For 5 years, 10,000 men dragged sand and clay into the water, building a wall across an open arm of the North Sea. On the 28th of May, the last gap closed, and a 32-kilometer wall held back the ocean. Behind it, the trapped saltwater slowly turned fresh into a giant lake. One thing was proven forever: a sea can be walled off. 100 years on, the same idea has reached the coast of Gujarat. To wall off this sea, 4 problems must be solved at once. Watch them fall, one by one. Here is the first thing most people get wrong. The trouble is not that Gujarat has no water. It is that Gujarat throws its water away. This is the Gulf of Khambhat, a wide funnel of the Arabian Sea that cuts into the coast. On one side lies Saurashtra, always short of water. On the other, rivers like the Sabarmati and the Mahi pour fresh water into the Gulf, where the salt sea swallows it whole. You cannot fix this with another dam or canal. To save that water, you have to block the Gulf itself. This is the Kalpasar Project. Take the machine apart, one layer at a time. Layer 1 is the wall. And here is what nobody tells you. The hard part is not its length, but what the wall stands on. 27 kilometers of it must cross open, moving sea, with no solid ground beneath. Workers drop rock into deep water 1 truckload at a time, each load holding against the tide before the next lands on top. End to end, from near Bhavnagar to near Baruk, it runs about 60 kilometers. The Dutch wall was 32, so this one is nearly twice as long. And the moment it rises, the sea begins charging it. A plain wall cannot survive that. Layer 2 is the tide. Twice a day the Gulf of Khambhat breathes, the water rushing in and out harder than almost anywhere on Earth. It can rise and fall by 11 meters, a wall of water as tall as a 3-story building, the highest tide in the country. And it does not just rise. It charges in, fast enough to sweep a person off their feet. Put a solid wall in front of that, and the sea hammers it flat. So the wall cannot just be a wall. It must open and shut, letting water out when the rivers swell the basin, and slamming closed when the sea charges in. A wall that moves against the sea. That is the hardest machine here, and almost no one ever has built one. Only one country has. In 1953, a storm surge smashed the Dutch dikes and drowned 1,836 people in a single night. Their answer was the delta works, barriers that open and shut against the sea. The Eastern Scheldt Barrier holds 62 giant steel gates that hang open for the tide and the fish, then slam shut the moment the sea rises 3 meters. Near Rotterdam, 2 steel arms, as long as the Eiffel Tower, swing closed on their own when a surge threatens. 70 years went into that one trick, a wall that moves. So in May of 2026, the Indian Prime Minister flew to the Netherlands and signed a deal with the Dutch Water Ministry, the people who own those gates. The aim is not to copy the wall, but to buy the gates, and a 70-year head start. Layer 3 is where the salt sea turns fresh, but not the way most people think. This is not a desalination plant. Nothing strips the salt out. You shut the sea out and let the rivers keep pouring in. Year after year, fresh water fills the basin and pushes the old salt water out through the gates. The Gulf stops being ocean and becomes a lake, a reservoir of about 1,600 square kilometers, the size of a major city. That water would reach close to 1 million hectares of dry Saurashtra farmland that waited generations for it. Layer 4 turns the wall into a road, almost for free. Build a 60-kilometer wall across a sea, and you get a bridge by accident. The crest is planned as a corridor 130 meters wide, a 16-lane highway beside a 4-lane railway, straight across the water. That free bridge redraws the map of Gujarat. Today, the drive from Bhavnagar to Surat goes the long way around the Gulf, about 240 kilometers. Cross over the wall instead, and it drops to 60. 240 kilometers, cut to 60. There was almost a fifth prize. That 11-meter tide was once drawn up as a 6,000 megawatt power station before the plan was simplified. Now step back and watch it all work at once. A 60-kilometer wall holding back the entire Gulf of Khambhat. On one side, the Arabian Sea charges in with its 11-meter tide. On the other, calm fresh water. The gates breathe with the tide, and for the first time, the sea cannot get in. Above, 16 lanes of traffic cross open water, and beyond, the dry fields turn green. One structure holds the sea, stores the water, feeds the farms, and carries the road. The sea that fought back twice a day is finally beaten. But here is the part the headlines skip. The sea may not even be the hardest enemy. Two quieter ones are waiting. The first hides in the rivers. The Gulf of Khambhat is one of the muddiest seas on Earth, its violent tide keeping the water thick with mud. Today, that tide is also the cleaner, dragging the mud out to sea twice a day. Wall the sea off, and the cleaner switches off with it. The mud stops washing away and settles on the reservoir floor, slowly filling the new lake. The fix is the trick the Dutch used in 1932. A line of sluice gates flushes the mud out, and dredgers scoop it up. The second enemy is not the sea at all. It is the price, and the coast this wall would change. The May 2026 application puts the cost near 1,33,000 crore rupees, about $14 billion. And that 11-meter tide does more than threaten the wall. It stirs the Gulf into one of the richest fishing grounds on the coast. Wall it off, and that fishing engine slows with it. It has happened here before. After the Sardar Sarovar Dam choked the Narmada, the prized Hilsa catch crashed from 15,000 tons to under 5,000 in a decade. 30,000 fishing families fought a nearby dam under black flags. These costs are real, and no one hides them. So where does Kalpasar stand today? After 50 years on paper, it has taken its first real step. The clearance application is filed, with the National Environmental Institute running the study. If it passes, construction could begin around 2028, and the wall could stand by the mid-2030s. 100 years ago, the Netherlands looked at an arm of the sea and decided to shut it out forever. Today, a wilder, stronger sea is being measured for a wall nearly twice as long. If it works, it will be the largest thing ever built to hold back an ocean. The Dutch proved a sea could be walled off. This would prove it can be done bigger. A sea turned into a lake by choice. This is the Terminal Intelligence Bureau. Like, share, and subscribe for more.